What's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're just gonna show you how to repack a wheel bearing on a boat trailer or a camper trailer, or a trailer in general. It's usually pretty easy. You're gonna need lots and lots of towels, but guys, do not use your wife's nice towels. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna lay down a towel underneath where you're working. This cap has to come off. It comes off pretty easy. Get a hammer and just kind of tap it as you work around it, and it usually pops right off. Next thing you want to do is clean up some of this excess grease. This is why you're going to need a lot of towels. Alright, this is where trailers are going to start to differ from one to the next. So on this one, it has a cotter pin. You just want to straighten the cotter pin out and then you can pull it out. Some will have like a flat brass thing that just sits over the nut. You just kind of get a screwdriver in there and pop that little sucker off. But with this one at the cotter pin, we're just going to straighten it out. Now this nut should really only be about finger tight, so it should come off pretty dang easy. And you'll see I'm wearing gloves because there's a ton of grease here and it gets everywhere. Now this whole drum will come off all as one piece. There is a washer and a bearing just on the inside of this. Those will all kind of pop out as I pull this whole drum off. Now that that drum is off, we can give it a good thorough inspection. Obviously this is leaking, so we're going to go ahead and replace this seal. Pull the inner bearing out. We'll inspect the surface of the drum here to make sure everything's okay. We'll inspect the spindle to make sure that everything is okay on the spindle here, as well as the shoes to make sure the shoes are all okay. And all the hydraulics are all working properly as well. We'll give everything a good thorough inspection, wipe everything down with a rag, make it all clean. Next thing we're going to do is pull this seal out. If you have one of these hook tools, it really helps a lot. If you don't, a big screwdriver should do just fine. That seal is garbage. We'll just go ahead and chuck that. Pull the bearing out. Give it a good wipe down. Clean it up real good. So once you get that bearing nice and clean, then you can give it a good thorough inspection. You want to check each one of these little needle bearings to make sure there's no discoloration or pitting, anything like that. These have just some very light scoring across the bottom. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but very light discoloration across the bottom of these. So I'm going to go ahead and replace these bearings. We'll call down to our local parts house. They usually have them in stock. While we're waiting for new parts to show up though, we're going to go ahead and try and clean this out as best we can. We want to get all this old, nasty, unusable grease out of there so we can get some nice, fresh, good grease in there and keep these new bearings lasting as long as possible. So next we're going to go ahead and repack the new bearing. We're going to use this little guy to do it. If you don't have one of these, you can still repack a new bearing. You just have to put a bunch of grease in the palm of your hand and kind of squish the bearing into the grease, or the grease into the bearing, whatever. But if you have one of these, it makes it a lot less messy. It's still messy, don't get me wrong, but it's less messy. Then we're just gonna take this and drop it right down in there, just like that. And then we'll go ahead and put the new seal on it. We're gonna use a new seal every time, never reuse the old seal. They're damaged, they won't work right. I'm gonna set it down in there, kind of angle it a little bit, so it's not sitting completely flat, but just angled a little bit. And then you wanna, if you have a dead blow, you wanna use a dead blow. And then you kind of hit it at an angle while you're holding it down. Takes a bit of practice to learn how to do it right. Once you get it, you can just finish tapping it in. Seals are pretty cheap, so if you screw up the first 2 or 3, that's okay. The parts stores always have more. Now that I've got my inside bearing installed with the new seal and my outside bearing greased and ready to go on, now we'll go ahead and put the hub back on the spindle. Once you get it put back together, you can slide your cotter pin in there. Now this nut goes finger tight, maybe just a touch more. Do not tighten it down too much. If you put too much pressure on those taper bearings, you'll blow them out. If you own a trailer, you should really have a grease gun. You can pick them up from your local parts store pretty cheap, usually about 15-20 bucks. They'll have a tube of grease that goes in there. Once you get it all put back together, hook onto the Zerk on the end of it there. A couple pumps of grease, maybe like 5 or 6. And then we can put the cap back on. You're done. Well, with that one anyways, but then you still have to do that one and the other 2 on the other side. All right, guys, well, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. We'll see you next time.